shots on
30
all that
days.
sewer work he did this spring, and I think he ran into some issues, so he was getting as-built over for that.
Okay.
I need to follow up with him again. Make sure he's. And I did take a walkthrough around the amphitheater, and we'll take, like, at those plans, we'll take a little closer look at getting some shade and stuff. Notice there's a lot of cracking in the concrete around it.
Yeah, Mike was gonna come back and fix it.
Okay.
There were some issues that, something with the way the building, like, it didn't like let it move. So, like,
That was what was, I was trying to figure out, it didn't quite look like settlement.
no,
And then
I think it was the way that it froze and then thawed or whatever. And because we had so much snow and weathery stuff right after it happened that Mike couldn't figure out. I mean, they thought they did a great job or whatever, but it sounds like it was something the way the cement guys attached it to the building or something. Because
maybe they had it tied into
Yeah,
some of those foundations.
yeah,
It
because
looked
Mike had some guy come back and look at it, and that was the situation. So
Okay.
Ever.
okay, now we're ready. I think.
I didn't see a
He
little
was here.
agenda for it, so I didn't.
No, I didn't either, and it was not on the calendar,
Okay.
so.
I was- oh my God. Hopefully it was very clean. Do you have a sec?
Yes.
Good enough, I think. My thingy disappeared.
Particular place you'd like me to set up shop? or-
No, wherever you want. They'll just be, I don't know that Alan is coming and Dina's already here, so wherever you want.
Okay.
Wow, I get one too. Sure.
We got extra.
And we know what sidewalks are gonna be easier to run on.
Good luck.
I've got. Might be helpful for us.
Ready?
Yeah.
I will call the meeting to order. Is there any public comment?
No,
Hearing none, we will go to the approval of the minutes. I entertain a motion to approve the minutes of July 12th, 2021.
I second that.
Motion made and supported. Discussion. Hearing none, all in favor, say aye. Opposed, motion carried. Items of business, number 2. Review the CIP road, sidewalk, and parking lots. So you can take it over.
All right. So we've been working on putting together capital improvement plan for the city in regards to roads, sidewalks, and the parking lots. We've been pulling inventory information and conditional assessment data. Some of it is information that the city already has collected, and then some of it we had to go out to the field and collect. We used a standard system of Paiser ratings, which allows us to be able to keep our conditional assessment consistent with a lot of the funding sources that are available for these types of assets. So we wanted to try to make sure that we were keeping that in line with data that was already collected, and the ability to transition that into possible monies to help fix that.
That makes sense.
Taxing. So what we've got for you today is just kind of an update on what we've collected, what we've organized so far from that information in regards to these assets. And just to kind of look at ballpark, what does it look like cost wise, and what would be looking at in time frames here and targeting it into a 5-year type program. So each of these tables, again, this is going to be information overload. There's a lot of data. We've thinned out the tables too, just to kind of give you guys an idea, but wanted to make sure that we had enough information to be able to see what was going on and what we were looking at. So we have 3 packets of tables. The first packet, it's got the purple and kind of a gold color on it, is the roads. And this is showing what we've looked at for a 5-year breakdown. And with the roads specifically, we actually went down and projected a planned period of expenditure with that for addressing all of the road assets in the city. Go along with that table, we have a map that's in here as well. And the map is color coded to show which years the primary work would be occurring. And I say that because some of these roads will actually be touched more than once in a 5-year period. So I'll get into a little more detail on those in just a minute, but I want to introduce the rest of the information that you guys have available to you as well. So this second packet, it's kind of a thick packet yet, it's got the information on the sidewalks. We did a sidewalk inventory. We looked to see what sidewalks we had. We checked sidewalk widths. We looked at grades and sidewalk ramps to compare for what was in compliance with ADA right now, and what areas we probably could use some attention, and then to be able to look as well at what areas aren't covered at all.
I'm glad you did this and not me.
There was a lot of area to cover. It did definitely take some effort to get through all of that, and a lot of smart level time.
This is good information to have.
Yeah,
It really is.
it really is.
Yeah, this gives us the ability to be able to adapt and put together applications for funding now as things come out, and be able to package stuff together with what we know in the streets and sidewalks and even the parking lots themselves, to be able to see what we can do about capturing those dollars. The third item, single sheet. We don't have quite as many of these assets, so luckily it managed to be on one piece of paper.
Yay!
For the parking lots. We use the same assessment for the pavement conditions as we did for the sidewalks and and the roads to keep everything consistent in that fashion. And then we looked at a number of things to tie with these as to what the general drainage is for requirements for those. So as if anything needs to be done in the future for any level of improvements, or if we're touching it with certain types of rehab methods, we know there are certain things we're gonna have to take into account to handle that, whether it's water that's just shedding directly off of those pavements, or if we're capturing it in a storm sewer system. And along with that, that's what this other packet is. Of these are just screenshots, aerial of each of those parking lot areas. And we marked out what we know based on the overall contours of the area, so what the anticipated drainage is for those lots as well. So it makes it a little easier to put a visual with the names on here. So that's each of these pieces of data that we have. I want to get into a little bit before I start getting into more
That post
detail.
office one's got a lot of weird stuff on it.
I know.
It
it's
does.
good.
Okay.
There's
Looks like it all drains toward the center.
a lot of stuff draining in a few different directions on a few of these. And I think there's a couple of them that are a little on the flatter side as well. That makes it a little bit trickier about where it's all going, but. And we did split up to get it to show up properly on a, or easy enough on a sheet, the alleyway and the parking lot behind the post office. Some sheets there. Before I dig into a little bit more of the overview on the detail we found, do you guys have any questions so far on that part of the data? What we got?
She did not include the lot on the side of the parking lot of the perimeter, right?
Correct.
Because that's, yeah. Okay.
Yep, and
And
anything
the
in
alley gets a little iffy, whose is what, so.
yeah, and we're hoping we are conservative on the square areas in there, and anything that would be going on in that
Okay.
area may need to be coinciding with maybe some private participation in
Yeah.
that.
And we
We
did
just-
that before.
We'll have to be careful about what we can do with funding for that type of work, because some of the funds we can't use on private property, so we have to be careful about what gets assigned to which, and the projects that have multiple participation, which shouldn't be an issue. It's just something we have to keep in mind as we go on some sort of things, applications.
So the sidewalks, the red is out of compliance, and the yellow is, I mean, what is the red and the yellow highlights for sidewalks?
All right, the red and the yellow. I think our reds were, we had a couple that were duplicates, so they didn't get filled in because they actually showed up in separate line items.
Okay.
And it ties into that. And then yellows were flagged for, I don't remember that one. They are, because they're not just the ones that are out of compliance. We have quite a few more that are out of compliance than just the yellow.
Okay.
I think these were field reference markers for it. They're not necessarily specific ties to that.
Okay.
We do have a lot of area that does not have any sidewalk at all, so that's why when we get into the numbers, we'll see that they're pretty sizable to be able to add the dollars in there.
Yeah, that's a lot of info.
That's why we kind of wanted to do a little bit at finance, and
Yeah.
like we had it with the DPW, just so it gives you a really good time to ask some questions and we'll be ready to help the other council members.
Well, and it's good to have a list of shovel-ready stuff.
Yep.
In case money frees up here very soon.
And the way that we have the work categorized in a few of these, it also allows us to package deals. So maybe it's not, we don't take the specific year for that. Some of the funding sources score points with preventative maintenance type work versus paving work. So we can go after chip and fog seal or crack sealing work and be able to package those things that. And so maybe we're switching gears around depending on what money comes available.
But I think some of the ARPA funds, the way some of, I mean, it's kind of all over the place, but right now it sounds like you're not gonna be able to use those on the roads. But you can use them on the trains. Is that right?
I've heard a couple different.
Okay,
things,
because
so
me too. I'm like,
nothing seems to be settling on where
Okay.
those dollars are at. Now, I have seen some that communities that have started to look at what they can use that for and then maybe pull general fund dollars to pay for other things and then use that to cover things that they could pay for with general fund dollars
right,
in order to kind of get around what they wanted to make sure that they can use those
Okay.
dollars for. So there might be some options to do that way as well.
Yeah.
And then we're seeing all this talk about what they're looking at infrastructure wise at the federal government level. And what does that really roll out to be, what we can use it for local level? And it's still real tough to tell. They called it infrastructure, but they've packaged a lot of different things that are in there that aren't necessarily hitting what we would traditionally look at for infrastructure, sewer, roads, sidewalk type of thing. We've got, and it's not that it's not infrastructure, it's just not what we would traditionally be looking at. So we get internet and some few other things that are in there where those are carrying a lot more dollars than some of this infrastructure that's already in place. It needs some help and attention. It's be nice
Yeah.
to see some of those dollars coming this way. So,
Yeah.
Have lead pipes.
we don't have city water. Yeah,
yeah, and that's that we've seen a lot of water funding things and some of that spurred on by things dealing with lead, but we haven't been able to tap into those funds. We don't have the city water. Plus and a minus, one less thing to maintain.
Right.
But does have some impacts on what dollars are being played.
And still working on the bill.
Yes.
They could vote on it any day now.
And we're expecting, Eagle had several planned programs to come out for dollars that would also impact stormwater and sanitary wastewater. But not everything has been appropriated or funded yet from the legislative side. So until that actually happens, we haven't seen some of these programs fire up. And if that comes to light, we might be able to see some more dollars to look at a few other projects that are out there that are more specific on the wastewater side. All right, so a little more detail on the road. We do have the road section broken out by years. And just to kind of give you a little background, these colors on here are representing a couple of packages that are already in play. So the ones that are in this tan or brown or orange color.
Whatever it is.
In that range. That work is associated with what's going to be happening this year, very, very soon. Still hoping to your start date on that. It's very, very soon.
I just asked, did anything happen on that today? Nope.
So the purple is what was in the category B grant application recently. So it doesn't mean that we have that work, but we associated it as though it was funded work and looked at it in that fiscal year for 22. So that's what those color codes are, is those are really tied to something more than just a planning tool. It's associated to a type of project. And in each of these categories, each year, you'll see some of them are listed for a rehab method and some of them with the dollars associated with it. If there's no work associated in those years, that's planned for a different construction scene.
So when you came up with these, did you use the curve and road soft to figure out like what group the road was in the treatment, or
We use for our general basis, the category B grant actually has a range of Paisley ratings tied
Okay.
to a method of repair. So because that grant, as long as that's available, is going to be higher likelihood for something that we could use for funding. We had set everything up to be able to match that. And it's really, it's not a bad approach overall. What we did is most of those have a range by value. So maybe the range for the work is from a 5 to a 7. Well, we looked at doing that type of work when the condition was the better, the 7. And we did that because we're looking at a 5-year layout. We're expecting some level of deterioration of the roads during that period. So if we are targeting the higher level on the fix, if that ends up being a later category, we should still be in the same fix type at that point. And then I kind of mentioned earlier, not all of the projects or streets are gonna, some of them are actually gonna get touched more than once. So if we have a road that we're doing some mill and resurface or HMA pavement replacement, where we have really new paving going on, we're planning to do within the next 2 years a crack sealing job. So we can try to preserve that pavement as long as we can and try to keep the moisture out of that. It's really economical way of making that repair and then keeping that pavement section up for that period.
Got a question on that front page there. The last purple right here where it says Church Street from West Grand River to East First North, is that supposed to be West First North? Because East First North is on the other side of Chrome.
I'll have to double check that database. We found a few things that were.
So the church is going from Grand River up to West First North.
Yeah.
Because East First North would be completely way over to the other side.
Yeah, I think we found a couple things that are in here that we're gonna have to send back to the state and have them tweak a little bit of that.
Because then the one underneath that would still.
That's, I mean, that's good though.
Yeah.
Yeah.
To
And
find
then the
some.
one underneath that is kind of the same thing. isn't it?
Same one, yep.
I mean, you could probably just drop the east and west because Crum Street is the divider
Right.
for east and west.
That's coming out of the
Roads
roads
off
off
data,
database.
yeah.
So
Yeah, so
anytime
roads
we
off
pull
has
that data,
like been built for years from the tech people. And so we've been using that, but
Yeah, First North is First North.
it might be easier to drop the east if they, you know,
if they allow, yeah.
yeah.
Make some change to that. And
But
address
that is, would be correct, it would be west.
We found a handful of things. We're gonna have to put together a list and send that on to them so that they can get that updated in their master data set.
Okay, well, I think we got general understanding enough to explain it to council. So,
And then we got some numbers and.
Yes, so the last page in the road section has some totals on there per year of what's programmed in here. We've laid this out so that the first 2 years, 22 and 23, and then 25 and 26 are where the bulk of the work would be, so that could be done in 2 bonding cycles. This touches all of the roads, so it's giving a fix to everything in here. And the reason that's laid out in that fashion is it gives an order of magnitude. So in the next 5 years, we want to start working towards being able to have the road sections brought up to into the 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 categories. This is the level of expenditure we would be looking at. And that's based on current dollars.
Okay, so what if council looks at that and goes, well, we can only do like 350 each year, then what?
Then we could look at what to reprogram in each
Okay.
of those years.
So then we have it spread up, we can figure it out or
Yes,
whatever.
yep, because of the way we have things set up and assigned in here, we can repackage and adjust which years which work was gonna go. But in order to make sure that we had the whole order of magnitude in here in the 5-year period, we included everything in.
I mean, this is something I could give to the bond guy and he could run some numbers for me to determine, you know, what our payment would be and where we would be at. And, you know, if we did a issuance for this year and then an issuance for that year.
I would have him, with the bond guy, I'd add a little bit of a contingency for that, just to make sure.
Right,
But yes, yep, this gets us in the ballpark to be able to start thinking about what that is.
Okay.
But currently not funded, right?
Currently, this is not funded, right?
Yeah. 2021 is funded, 2022 is.
Right. So that, I mean, and then on top of that, you know, I mean, the parking lots and the sidewalks aren't either. So, but this gives us some real numbers and real dollars to look at.
Right.
The money that we've been putting away, what that will cover, and then if we bond, what that will cover. So, I mean, I think it's just, I mean, it's crucial for us to actually, instead of just throwing a dart at something, we actually, I mean, this is just gonna be an excellent tool.
It's nice to see where the red marks are. This and that, what needs to be done.
So the sidewalks is a little bit confusing, but we've got a lot of the same information on that last page as well. And I say it's a little confusing because with the roads, we just have a segment of road. We can give those numbers and lay that out. With the sidewalks, we have, are we gonna put it on both sides, one side? What areas do we need to look at, repair, replacement for? So the big numbers to look at though are, this adds up to, if we decided we want sidewalk on both sides of the road, everywhere up to ADA standards, we're looking at about $2.7 million. Just to give us a ballpark of, you know, what does that look like? We can back that to just being on one side of the road everywhere and be able to cut those numbers down quite a bit. We could look at a focus of just where we have most of our residents and businesses in the central area here, and that's about $1.4 million. If we want to extend into some of the, you know, with West Street or Woodbury, I know there's been some discussion about potential for sidewalk out there. We're talking about those streets are going to bring in like $1.2, $1.3 million to be able to bring sidewalk out in that area, both sides. 650,000 ballpark for one side. So just it's
So I'm trying to understand this back page.
yes.
So Woodbury Road from Grand River to Doyle, one side of the road, what would that cost?
644.
Well, the 650 covers a number of the
Yes.
outside. So
It's
everything.
got other fixes in it, right?
So Woodbury would be. Close to 90 for one side of the road.
That's a lot less than I thought.
And we're running with numbers and grading now. Some of the streets, that's part, this is programming numbers.
Right,
That
right.
might be more expensive because of some of the things. we'll have
Right,
to
there's
do
some
with
serious
grading wise.
ditching out there and things like that.
Well, and they're gonna wind up with a nice shoulder to walk on too,
Yeah,
after we fix that road.
that's true. There you go.
So anyway, we don't want to run over into police committee too far, but,
That's all right. Okay. We got time. Mine doesn't last long.
all right.
And then the last sheet there is the parking lots. A lot of this depends on what we really want to look at for investment in parking lots. The parking lots around the park, the McClintock Park, they're all in pretty decent shape. We could probably do cracks and we could cover most of that. Most of the rest of the parking lots have scored 2s and 3s on the ratings. It's a 10-point system. So we're looking at probably needing to do what we call an HMA surface removal and replacement. Maybe we can preserve the base, aggregate base, and maybe touch it up in a few spots that may not be as good, and be able to do that work. And that's kind of what we targeted here for cost, and just to give us an idea of where we're at. That would be that far right column.
So we need to be looking for grants for parking lots.
Yes.
Okay.
So what was the price tag for new rating to fix all parking lots?
So here's the parking lot.
Um,
We haven't handed these out yet, but the parking, McClintock Park, so what, that's 170, 200, 300,
Yeah, that depends on how you fix it.
right, $400,000 or $500,000.
You know, crack ceiling's $2 a yard, chip and fog is 13, and then remove and resurface is 50. Yeah, but I don't know, I think parking lots are a priority.
I think so. I mean, we have to keep up on them, you know, we definitely do, so. But I think that now, you know, then I think that finance, you know, and DPW each need to meet and, you know, talk about when and how, and then, you know, we need to talk about where we're gonna get the money from and how we're gonna budget it and implement this into our capital improvement plan that we've been working on. So this just actually helps us, you know, be able to actually schedule those dollars. You know? And then when somebody comes to us and asks us why we haven't.
Why are we
put
doing
side-
that? Well, we're doing that because it rated a 3 in Phaser rating,
Right.
and
Okay.
it's, and the drainage is wrong, and.
Well, and then, I mean, you guys from here can prioritize, you know, which ones you think need to be done and how we're gonna fund it. But when somebody comes to us and wants us to add sidewalks on Woodbury Road, it's not that we don't want to.
I mean, but we can give them a more clear answer.
Correct. We can
So-
say, you know, we would love to do that, but we're gonna need some help raising, you know, the money to do that. And we have a couple of other things in line with it, or the gentleman that wanted us to do that piece on, you know, Shiawassee. At least we now have an answer. That boulevard is a little bit tricky, depending on how we want to fix that.
Yeah.
You know, I mean, I don't even know what you guys did with that in here to do, leave it, yeah,
Shiawassee,
the boulevard.
that's still Boulevard.
Yeah.
We left it as is. And we didn't make really any configuration changes with what's in here. So
Yeah.
if we end up doing any of that, that'll be a change in cost. whether it's
Right.
Road diet that gets
The
smaller.
boulevard makes it twice as expensive.
It's hard to deal with. It is. So,
It's not centered in the right way, so it impacts what you have for grading, and so.
we already found the issues there.
Don't run over my flowers.
So then our intent is just to take this to council and introduce it tonight so that everybody hears this. And then we'll just, from there, I'm assuming, kick it back to finance and DPW to kind of start working on it for next year's budget.
Okay, anything for others? Motion adjourned. Meeting adjourned.
20 minutes.
Sorry that we didn't get good notes to.
No, that's okay.
Cassie went on vacation. She must not have got it in the packet.
I got out of the shower and was like, oh, I have a call. Oh, I have a text. Oh, hey, how you doing? You guys are up.
I think we're on Zoom.
Yep.
Someone see.
That's okay.
Play with that word. Start it and switch it.
Me and Marcy didn't get the pink memo,
The what?
the hot pink memo.
I don't think I have any hot bake anymore. That's for
Me either. I don't think I ever did.
a long time.
You have more of those maps for the rest of this, or?